Hello, Mike.
Hello, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
So. So as per my email, I'm unlikely to be able to stay. In fact, I can't stay beyond the first hour.
Um, we've had a bunch of requests to move things, and so we might be done in the first hour or so.
Fine. Well, I mean, just for the record. Firstly, I'm happy with the minutes. Secondly, um, I don't think there's anything further on the AAA SIG that I have any concerns about, so I'm happy that as well. And the suggestion from Google on working together on the Linux kernel, Red Hat supports, but currently has no um, available resource for.
Yeah. Um, so Dimitri can't be here today,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's why the proposal to coordinate Linux changes. They requested that be moved since that one's not, urgent or
Oh,
whatever.
okay, fine. That
And
explains
the
that.
AAA proposal, Dimitri wanted to be here at least for any discussion on the chairs and stuff. And
Yeah.
so we'll still look at the proposal. But the votes itself, Dimitri asked if we could, since last time we said, hey, we wanted to have the proposal out for review before the vote started, a couple days or whatever.
Yep.
And since we didn't announce that, we're just going to discuss the proposal today, but either move the votes to email or to next meeting, whichever,
Yeah,
depending on how
fine.
the
That
discussion
sounds
goes.
good to me. No problem with any of
So
that.
we'll still discuss that, but the Linux kernel stuff we're not going to discuss today. They wanted to move that, so that's why.
Yeah, sure. All fine.
And since this is Chinese New Year, I'm not expecting any of our Chinese colleagues to
Oh,
be
it's
here.
I lose track, but yes, that sounds about right.
So
Hello,
Happy New Year
Ava.
again.
Yes, I
Hello,
can.
hello.
Sorry.
You're saying hello?
Oh, hello, Dad. Yeah, I think I spoke at the same time as you. You doing well?
Well as I can.
Good, good.
Let's see if my video is working this morning. I think
It
is.
does seem to be.
Okay.
Well, mine doesn't seem to be. That's interesting. Oh, I know why. That's because I've taken the camera off this laptop. Okay, I'll.
Very clever.
Not really, no. Kind of the opposite. Not actually what I meant to do.
All right, folks can see my screen, yes?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Welcome, folks. We'll give a couple more minutes. What I don't know is if we will actually get quorum today.
Yeah,
As I was saying, this is, I think, tomorrow, at least in the US, it's tomorrow, is Chinese New Year. And so this is holiday season in China. So I don't think we're going to get any of our Chinese colleagues here. And so we will see
well, I
whether we
hope
get.
not for their sakes, if you see what I mean.
Because it's already close to Friday in China now. So I'm not sure we're going to get quorum. We'll see how things work out. So I still see things jumping around, and so we will wait a minute or two here for things to settle down.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome. I will have anyone new for the first time introduce themselves when we get to the roll call slide, which is that one. When we get to this slide here, anybody who's new for the first time, I'll have you introduce yourself. Just give me a heads up. I still see people joining. So if you're just here, Happy New Year. It is Chinese New Year week. So last month I got to say Happy New Year, and now I get to do it again. So.
Oh, good.
Excellent.
And sorry.
What year is it? A Chinese year?
Ox. Yeah, the ox.
Yes. The year of the rat ended, and the year of the ox is beginning.
There you go.
Great.
Sure did.
So, if anyone's looking for a jolt of happiness, I've recently started following Gurdeep Singh, the Bhangra dancing inhabitant of the Yukon wilderness. If you've searched for him on LinkedIn, He is a Sikh gentleman who does great Bhangra dancing in the wilderness in the snow, and it's just joyous. So I heartily recommend. I might try and find a link to him. He's great.
Send us the link then.
Yeah, I will try and find it. It's just great. And sometimes we just need a little bit of joy in our lives, and he just doesn't seem to know how not to be joyful. So I'll go with that. Goat Panda,
Great.
there we are, of Yukon. So if you let me find this Zoom meeting. Here we go, and chat.
All right.
There you go. Follow that link and watch his videos, preferably with sound on, but it doesn't need to be. And enjoy.
All right, let's go ahead and get started because I think we're at quorum, but we'll find out momentarily. And I'm not sure we're going to get that many other people. So let's go ahead and get started. And this might be a light agenda, so we will see here. So in other words, we have time. All right. If you are new here, just a quick note about the culture that we're trying to set. We try to make these meetings be open, where everybody is welcome. Although we do have voting members, with the exception of approval of minutes and budget discussions, right? This is a technical discussion where everyone's opinion is welcome and valued, regardless of whether even you're a member. So this is a public meeting. So if you're here for the first time, feel free to speak up. We would love to hear from you. We try to make this be an open and welcoming experience. This meeting is, however, covered by the Linux antitrust policy. And so if you're not familiar with that, linuxfoundation.org antitrust-policy is the URL. We'd encourage everybody. This is the legal structure that we sit under. And so we are bound by the antitrust requirements. This is the agenda that I put out in email today. So this is where we, or email, 2 days ago? And this is where we cover any changes there. One change request that I got was to take what was number 7, and that one was asked to be moved to the next meeting. The issue is Dimitri from Google cannot be here today. Keith is here. Thank you, Keith. But Dimitri cannot, and he wanted to be here for that discussion. So asked that one be moved since it's not urgent per se. And so I have tentatively done that. And on number 6, those of you who were here last time may recall that we said we wanted to have the proposal sent out like a couple days in advance so we could vote on it in this meeting. The updated request, since Dimitri cannot be here, and he was the person that ran the discussion last time, is that we discuss it today. And since it wasn't sent out, we're just going to do the vote either over email or the next meeting. So we currently don't plan to vote on that one today, but we do plan to discuss it. And so Keith is going to lead that. Other than those changes from what was sent out 2 days ago, are there any other change requests for this agenda here? Any other additions or reorders or deletions?
I have just a sort of info, if there's time, just a little report out on FOSDEM. Ava was there as well, and other people may have been there as well. I think it might be worth just reporting on that slightly, but it's not urgent. So.
Okay, why don't we do that right before number 6? So just because that's when I would normally be thinking about people in outreach, and so I would probably naturally think of it when we get to slide 5.
Works for me.
All right, excellent. Anything else? If I don't, then we'll cover it on any other business. But right now, let's try to do it under under point 5. So, okay. Hearing nothing else, let's go ahead. All right, so let's do our roll call here on the participants. I have not seen Accenture. Is Giuseppe, are you here? Nope. And Zongmin, I do not expect to be here because of Chinese New Year. Thomas, I believe I saw Thomas here. Yes, okay. Facebook, Eric, you're here. Yes. Dimitri is not here. Brandon is here. So Brandon, thank you. Howard, I don't expect to be here today. Simon Johnson, I saw, I'm here, and Mike is here. So wow, we actually have a pretty good set of quorum here. All right, so now that we've established we have quorum and we can actually do the vote on minutes, let me go through and have fairly new people introduce themselves. But I'm actually going to start with the newest member of the TAC. Thomas, I know you've been here before and you've introduced yourself before, but since you are now the official member from ARM on the TAC, would you like to introduce yourself again, now as a TAC member?
Hi, Dave. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, I'm Thomas. What can I say? I come from Italy, Milan, where I did my studies in computer science and maths. Now I live in Cambridge, UK, with my copious and belligerent family. I work for ARM in the architecture and technology group, and more precisely, I'm part of the prototyping team there, where we implement prototypes, obviously, and that are based around the ARM architecture. And we also do some standardization work, mostly in the IETF. And most recently, I joined the TCG as well. What to say? I'm not new to open source. In fact, after uni, I had a startup doing IoT and security work where all the products were strictly open source. So I'm quite familiar with the practices and not just on the receiving hand. We've also been active contributors to a few communities outbound. So I'm not new to open source, but I'm new to CCC. So I'll be necessarily in listen mode, at least for a little while I get a better understanding of the whole thing. I have met Eva from the AEA SIG preparation work and Dave in the ATF, but I don't know the rest of you. So names and faces is another sort of big thing that I need to get right. I'm not great at that usually. But anyway, I'm very keen to learn and super happy to get any help you could give me, pointers and whatnot. So that's it. I'm glad to serve this community. I hope I can make a good contribution once I have completed my sort of bootstrap.
Thanks, Thomas. We're glad to have you here.
Cool.
Sorry to lose Grant, but we're happy to have you here. Thanks for being here. And for those who don't know, Thomas said he participates in the IETF. He is one of the guys that's participating in the RATS working group, which does attestation in the IETF. And so Thomas and I have been in those Tuesday morning meetings every week for a while now. So,
yeah. Cool.
All right. All right, so let's go through anybody else that I don't see. Sorry if you've introduced yourself before, but I'm just going to start at the top of my list, which keeps jumping around. So Cyril or Cyril?
Cyril, yes. Hi, thanks. So my name is Silvio. So I represent Western Digital, who recently joined a confidential computing consortium. I am originally from France. I studied in France, in Canada, and now I live in California, in the US. Where I work for Western Digital in the research organization, leading a team called Software Solutions and Algorithms Group. And our interests are related to security, cryptography, as well as systems issues. And specifically, my interest in this, in the confidential computing consortiums are related to integration of storage in the problematic of confidential computations. And I hope I'll be able to make a contribution to this group.
Excellent. So thanks, Cyril, for being here. So Western Digital, has Western Digital finished? Are you guys now official members, or is that still in the process? Stefano?
Yeah, it's just still in the process. It's one signature is needed, so it's almost there.
All right, awesome. Well, as soon as you guys finish the paperwork there, then that means Western Digital can have a non-voting member of the TAC. Would you be the member of the TAC from Western Digital?
I don't think we've quite figured that out, but yeah, we'll know that very soon.
May I ask?
So,
sorry.
Once you figure out who that is, that just means that if you or whoever it is has a GitHub ID, then if you can send that to Stefano and me, then we can make sure that you're on the automatic notice of pull requests and things, since you still get to review and approve any of the GitHub pull requests and stuff we do. So that's why whoever it is, we need, if there's a GitHub ID, send that to us.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Go ahead, Mike.
So yeah, just a quick one for Stefano actually. Which is with Western Digital, and I believe someone else announcing as well, how close are we to needing another elected set of elected members from the general? Do you know what I mean? Sorry, I haven't explained it very well.
Yeah, no, general member representative. Yes, I believe. Let me get back to you on that because I'm not sure exactly the number.
And I think it's every 10.
Yeah, I can't remember if it's 10 or 8. I want to check the charter before I say that.
I think that applies to the board, but not the TAC, if I remember our charter right.
Correct.
You may be
I think-
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we're just the recipients of it. Your question is valid, but I think it's only for the governing board, I think is what the document says right now. But
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And your question is excellent, Mike, and I believe it is every 10.
Okay.
And what level is Western Digital joining? It's general member?
I believe
Correct?
so, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so then what I said is right, that you wouldn't go on this list, so you don't have to vote on minutes, haha. But you do get to be on the GitHub approvals and stuff, so. Or
Good.
you or whoever, Western Digital, yeah.
Right. Got you.
All right, so let's carry on down the list. Anybody else that I see that's new? Let's see, Keith, I think you were here last time, yes?
No, I wasn't actually.
Okay, go ahead and introduce yourself then.
Yeah, so I'm Keith Moyer. I work in the confidential computing group at Google, leading the team for identity and attestation. I've been with Google for 4 years. I was in the storage industry for 12 years prior to that at NetApp.
Great. And Keith is going to run that discussion on the AAA SIG in place of Dimitri today. So thanks for being here, Keith. Let's see. Richard, I think you've been at the TAC meetings before, so we're going to keep going. Let's see. Sherry, I think you've been here in a bunch before.
Yep.
And that's the bottom. So I think that's everybody. I recognize every other name as having been here at least a couple times. So, all right. Well, it's fun when the significant part of the meeting is introducing new folks, right? Isn't this great? All right, so let's go to the approval of the TAC minutes. And again, the only people that have to read and review the minutes, others are welcome to and bring up any issues if they need changes, but these are the people whose responsibility it is to approve minutes. And so if your name is on this list here, that means that you are voting on the approval of the minutes from last time. So let me first ask, is there anybody that needs more time to review the minutes? Okay. Stefano, I sent a minutes request. I don't know, was that already addressed, which was on the actual minutes. I wanted a section added. I know it was there in the action items. And so the point that I had raised was last time we actually did have an agenda topic where Stefano led the discussion of the webinar questions and the effects on the FAQ and things. And that wasn't up here in this here, right? In this list of TAC white paper, outreach, technical events. I thought it was in between these two, and I didn't see it added as an agenda point.
Yeah, let me check on that because I did update that, and I'm noticing that the file name is 2020-21.
Yeah, so I don't know
So,
if you already have one that you.
I'll see. I
pushed
might
out.
have updated it, and it just I probably changed the file name to. Anyway, I'll figure it out.
Okay, so tell you what, if you, I don't know if you can do that and take notes at the same time. Should I
can indeed.
hold the vote? Okay.
I'll
So if you
update that
do
right
that,
now.
then I'll just come back to this as soon as you say it's live. So.
Sounds good.
All right, because
The,
that one
link
I
for-
requested the other day. So go ahead.
The link for the slides for the tech discussions wasn't working, so not super important, but if you're fixing things in there.
Sure, we'll update that too.
We will count these as no votes, which might change to yes votes later in the agenda here.
Sounds good.
So for those who are new, right, no means it's a request for amendment before we approve, and abstain usually means I wasn't there at that meeting and haven't reviewed it. So we'll count those as technical temporary no's until they get fixed here. All right, so we're going to move on. And Stefano, make sure we come back to it at least by another business. So
Sure.
interrupt that. All right, so let's go through the action item review. So we probably do need Stefano you to pay attention here because a lot of this is you. So let's start at the top here. Mike, our treasurer, any status updates on the top one, or do we keep it again?
You know what I'm going to say. No updates.
Okay, just checking. All right, Stephen Wally, Lisa 21 discussion, any updates?
Finding the mute button. I forwarded the call for paper to everyone on this list and at outreach a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago now.
Okay. So
Call for papers is out, call for sponsors is out. I will shove the call for sponsors into the outreach discussion next week.
Okay. Is there anything that the TAC needs to discuss, or should we cross this off here and let?
I would cross it off.
Okay.
It is more, I would encourage that all projects are paying attention And, you know, it's an ideal place to have a discussion from a virtual booth perspective. We will happily look for volunteers if we end up sponsoring the event and have a virtual booth.
So I think one thing that's worth saying, Steve, from that point of view, is in some ways it may be that projects may decide or may not decide whether or not to submit until we know whether CCC is sponsoring. If that makes sense.
Absolutely makes sense. Fair comment. The outreach committee is presently, they put a framework in place for how to think about their sponsorship dollars. And we are testing it yesterday and next week. So I imagine we should have some kind of an idea in the next week or two.
I will add that Lisa is, in my experience, a fantastic conference, and I would encourage folks who are deep in the infrastructure space to go there regardless of our sponsorship.
So a number of the projects that have been, at least that are in the process of coming through the CCC, are not necessarily having representatives that are here on the call. How do we want to make sure that the projects get noticed? Is that something that outreach wants to do? Normally, it's our responsibility to, you know, oversee projects, and so it would normally fall to us unless outreach tells us that they're going to do it. So how do we make sure the word gets out to these other projects?
Well, I think the answer to that is if people don't attend, as long as it goes on the list that we've possibly done our duty, we might want to do more than that. And I think it has gone out on the list, has it not, Steve, to the TAC list?
Yeah, I did send it out on the list. The other thing I suggested was that project mentors reach out to the projects.
Mm-hmm. Right, but we don't have project mentors per se until we actually complete the process.
I'm going to be a little bit of a broken record here and say that many of our constituents seem to have a hard time getting on the lists. So let's not consider the TAC list to be a public announced list, because it's not functioning that way right now. Could we put something on either an announced list and also fix the accessibility of the TAC list?
Definitely seconded.
Yeah, I was just going to say, sometimes there, even if there's one person, often at the projects, there's more than one person involved.
Yep.
And at most, one of them would be on a TAC list for some of these.
I would, and I think I have advocated for outreach, being able to say broadcast a notice like this to an announced list, but we don't have an announced list right now. And so perhaps, I'm not sure which, whether this is a TAC purview or a board purview, but I do believe we need to ensure that the accessibility of our mailing lists is, well, accessible. It's open to everybody. It's not a membership driven private thing that requires, a special response or acceptance from Stefano.
So we do have an announced list, and the list is open, so anyone can join it.
Oh, great. Okay. Then can we put this on the announced list rather than the TAC list?
Second, I want to make sure you two aren't talking past each other. When you say it's open, do you have to create a CCC account in order to join it?
Yes,
Definitely.
if you want to join.
That's what I think Ava is saying is less open than just subscribing.
Well,
Ava was asking for an announced list that anybody can subscribe to without having to create an account first. I think that's
correct. That is what I'm asking for. Yes, a list that someone can simply subscribe to without needing to join and get approved. That is a barrier to entry.
So they do have to join, but they don't have to be approved. In other words, they will have to go into groups.io, and I believe that requires them to set up an LFID. And then once they've gotten through that process, they'll be part of the main group, and they can join the announced group without my approval.
Right. So rather than derail this conversation, Dave, can we put this down as a separate action or discussion item that I would like to make the announced list more accessible to the general public?
Yeah, minimal viable governance.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure that this is really a TAC question, although it's something we have information that we have opinions on. And so this might be, because you were asking this, Ava, and this might be something that we bring up in the board meeting, which is 2 weeks from now, right, Steve?
Okay.
It is next week in this slot.
Next week in this slot. Okay, so let's put it on the list of the board for discussion, since I think it actually affects both outreach and TAC. This is a larger question that might be worth raising visibility of there.
Agreed.
Sure.
And I do think it impacts both bodies' ability to reach their members and announce things like, this call for papers.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
I've taken an action item to bring that to the board.
Okay.
Thank you.
And remind us, what's the dates of Lisa?
Oh, now you have to ask me a hard one.
Okay, which month?
I'm blanking entirely right
Okay.
now. I will
Okay.
quickly dig that out and
All right,
put it
fine.
in the chat.
Lisa is
All right.
1 to the 3rd of June.
June.
And yeah, June.
Excellent. Thank you for getting that fast. All right, let's keep moving. I still have the action item, and I know last time Stefano had his action item related to DOIs that Linux Foundation has done it before. That is still something we would like to do, and so I still have an action item on me to keep track of what the next steps are there, so that we can have DOIs in our white papers. But
yeah, I've dropped that into chat. There are several agencies that LF Creative Services can work with. They're going to reach out to one of them, and then the next step would be to hand our white paper to them to get it approved. And if it gets approved, then they'll give us a DOI number. So that is in process.
Okay, excellent. So should I cross this off or leave it on, just report back on?
Please leave it on, and I guess give it back to me.
Okay, so
oh, actually,
right
I guess it is already on me. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you see Dave here and Stefano on bullet 4 or whatever, and so I'm just going to cross off mine, and
Sure.
I'm going to have to reword this one because check with LF, you've done that part, and so report back on status of is what I'll change it to.
Sounds good. And before we get to the next action item, can we just jump back to the minutes, because it actually was updated. I think you just need to refresh your PDF.
Okay, I will do that now. Let's go ahead and refresh.
And I think it's number 7, 6.
Number 7. Okay, excellent. And somebody else spoke up. You said a link was bad. I forget who it was.
6.1. It's not material. I just thought as long as he was tweaking things.
And Stefano on this one?
If you click on it, does it work?
I'm in a PDF viewer. And
I see. Okay. Yeah. I'll go ahead and fix that now, too.
You can see this one right here. You can see, I don't know if you can see my cursor, right? I hover on it and the mouse changes.
Sure.
I hover on the slides and it doesn't.
It works in the doc. It must not translate to the PDF well. Because if you open up the doc, it'll link you over there.
Okay.
That's interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'll take a look at that. That might be a little more of a...
I would argue that the slides ought to be discoverable without the link, and so I'm happy to have the vote on the minutes even without that, although, and then as you could change it after the vote, that would be my opinion.
Yeah, I'll take a look at this and see why the PDF doesn't seem to like the link.
Okay, so now that section 7 has been added, let's go ahead and do the vote unless there's any objections. All right.
Can we do one more correction to the roll call? My affiliation is with Facebook and not AWS.
And not in our slides, but in the actual minutes themselves. Oh, I didn't even catch that. I'm glad you know. Thank you for paying attention. Wow. Okay, let's get that amended.
Sure.
That's the sort of thing where your boss just happens to see across it and think,
exactly.
What's going on there?
Don't want to get anybody in trouble.
Is there something I don't know? Okay, so shall we wait for that update before voting, or?
That update's happening right now.
Okay. Say when. See, this is how, I guess this is a test, right? It's just say, if any new people show up on here, are they actually checking the minutes, right? So, yeah, that's it. Yeah. Get back to the slide.
Okay, go ahead and update.
All right. All right. There goes. Okay. Eric is now at Facebook.
I agree.
Okay. Now I can ask, is there any other amendments to the minutes? Because I'm going to ask, is there anybody who would vote no, meaning you have a change, or is there anybody that would vote abstain? and then I'll just let it sit there since we can always amend them after approval. I'm not going to do a roll call vote. Okay, going once, going twice. No other no's or abstains. Okay, so sounds like they passed. Thank you all for diligently checking these minutes. Okay, now let's go back to the rest of these here. So Stefano, reporting back on license scan costs.
Right. So I believe I sent to the list a sheet that Steve Winslow provided that will detail out the cost. You should have that in your inbox, Dave, if you want to throw that up on the screen.
It's actually easier if you have it and you share it on your screen.
Sure. Yeah, I can do.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and let you share then.
Sure.
That was sent to TAC members or to the TAC list?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was pretty sure I sent it.
I don't remember seeing it. And instead of you guys watching me trying to search around to find it and having problems with it, it's easier if you have it, you just bring it.
Sure, yeah.
I don't remember it.
It's possible it's in my outbox waiting to be sent. But let me just bring up that document. There it is. Okay. Well, at least I have the document, so I didn't dream it. All right. And
I sent a few emails last week that I only sent in my head. So
yeah, I often find things in drafts that I wonder, oh, why is that in drafts? Oh, because I didn't click send. You have to actually click it. So I'll send this out to the list, not just in my mind after the meeting. But here's Mr. Winslow's basic overview. The cost, I believe, is on here too, correct? I would think that would be at the top. Let's see. I think maybe this does just describe, oh no, there we go, pricing, 10K. So the pricing part of this is 10K for 2021, beginning March 2021, invoiced March through December, $1,000 a month. And the summary of what it includes is here. So he's going to include Open Enclave NARCs, and then Graphene, Oclum, Keystone, and Veracruz. He's tentatively saying he will include, you know, that being said, if he opens up the code base and it's the size of the Linux kernel, he's going to need to step back for a moment and think about that price again. But assuming it's a manageable amount of code, he'll go ahead and add those as well.
Okay, because I think from memory, I think what we had discussed is since that 10K is flat for the set of projects, and then if we start having more, we would just decrease the frequency at which the newer ones, the less changing ones, would be done to keep under that 10K. I think was our current plan.
Correct.
Yeah, so we just alternate. So for example, if you have a project that sits there and has only very few pull requests or changes across a quarter, then it may not be worth, in terms of the deltas are minimal, then it's not worth going through another scan, as opposed to one that's had a whole bunch of pull requests and a bunch of churn. So
right.
Okay.
And there's quite a bit of detail here. So I'll, as I said, I'll email this to the list, and folks can read through all the details of what it'll actually contain.
So those are the prices. I don't recall, have we actually voted on whether we actually want to approve that in our budget, or is it already there?
We didn't because, sorry, Steve.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. That's a question for you.
Steve, you answering? Oh, maybe not. My understanding is we hadn't voted on it because we didn't want to until we knew whether it made sense.
Yeah, I believe that's where we left it, is we needed to look at this sheet. And I also, I did send out to the members of the TAC, the premier member, voting members, an actual example of NARCs and, I want to say, okay, thank you, Open Enclave.
Yeah. I saw it, it was those two.
And for those on the call, the reason I did that was because it does include a lot of details, obviously, about those projects that I don't know.
I've seen that. So if you could send that out as well, again, I'm really sorry.
Dave, you did get that, correct?
I did. And
okay, good.
I'm pretty sure Mike was on it too. So
Good. I'm glad I actually sent that one.
Well,
So
that
the
was,
reason,
I'm thinking the one that Steve sent out like months ago. Not last week, but I think I saw it like 3 months ago or something.
Well, I missed it, whichever time it came out. So
okay. All right. I'll be sure, Mike, that gets to you.
Okay.
But that'll give an example of the actual.
Yeah, just for everybody else, the type of stuff that it looks for is, let's say that your technical charter says everything is under, MIT or Apache or whatever. And if it finds any source code in there that mentions, GPL at the top or something other than any other license than the ones you had, then that will show up in the example of the scan that says, here's some other licenses there. So if you didn't know about that, then you should know about that. Then there's, I don't know, that's the one that jumps out at me as being an example. I forget what types of things are in there. There's a variety of different things it scans for.
So yeah, so and
it's all the stuff described there on the screen right now. So
right. So my thought is I would send this to the list so that everyone can review it, and perhaps in our next meeting we can decide if we want to either hold a vote or if we still need more information.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan. So let's put on the agenda for next time tentatively to actually have the vote, and this would be to approve $10,000 total in our budget for license scans for projects that have completed the CCC process, which right now is only 2, but we expect to have board votes either next week or a month from next week for somewhere between 1 and 3 additional projects that have been going through the pipeline. So,
and I believe our next meeting will be February 25th. So we'll just make this March idea that Steve has. But if we need to push that out, obviously he can figure out how to push this out so that we have more time to decide.
Okay. Sounds great. Sounds like a plan. So we'll make sure it gets sent out, and we'll put this on as a vote for next time.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to switch back to sharing mine so we can go down the rest of the items here. Okay. Back on my screen, folks.
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay.
And it looks like, so in terms of the example scans, I will send that out again, because I did send that to the just last night, but I'll double check with Dave and see if folks got that. And if they didn't, there's probably something just wrong with that email alias. So those example scans will go out to folks. In terms of the Google Doc for outreach, oh, that's done. Okay. So yeah, part of what you saw in that section was the Google Doc that's been shared with everyone.
This one was on the outreach webinar questions that we talked about last time.
Right.
Is that one?
Yeah, if you look at the minutes from the last meeting.
Oh, it's in there. Okay.
Yeah, and
gotcha.
I think I sent it to the list as well. Again, I think.
So then this is a prod for anybody else, because we actually did bring them up on the screen, had a brief discussion last time on a number of the questions, and we wanted a place to send people to iterate on. And so now that this is ready for us to do that, that is something we should start doing. Just like when we were iterating on the white paper, this is like fact questions or things that might be going on in a fact. And so we should start iterating on there and sending people that Google Doc. And so,
yeah, so I started a bit of work on this morning. There are some questions which feel like they're very much out of scope, and some which are so hugely in scope and are going to take so long that we may want to consider putting them off. But there's some very good questions as well, so it's worth having a go.
Okay, so if we have a light agenda, I might actually bring this up at the end in case there's any question, since you said you had been looking at it, Mike, if there's any question you think would be worth discussing for a couple
minutes.
Well,
I have to go in 23 minutes, so that may not happen from my point of view, but
gotcha.
People are welcome to look. Obviously.
Not a problem. All right, well, then let's move on then. This one is just brief. This is, as I know it, this is the status of stuff. I finished filling in the approval dates at the TAC level. The board presentations that have happened, all the ones that I could find. I don't know that these 3 have had a presentation to the board yet, even though graphene is, I think, up for a vote imminently. And so these are all the ones that the board still has yet to approve, of which I think between graphene and Veracruz and are at least very close to being ready for a board vote next week, if not before. And maybe there's a third one too that might be ready next week too. And it just depends on whether the last signature gets done. But what that means is that we need to make sure that there's mentors lined up for those three. And so as soon as that happens, then our next task is to assign mentors. And so previously, Veracruz, we had Grant as the I would be willing to be a mentor once it completes the process, but we just had Thomas replace Grant as our TAC member. Now, different point is that whether a mentor actually has to be a TAC member or not, we're responsible for assigning one. So let me first ask, if next week any of these complete the board vote, is there anybody who would volunteer to be a mentor for one of these? So let me just start with Veracruz, just since I talked about that. Thomas, is Grant still around as far as willing to do this, or does this mean we need to be looking for another possible mentor here?
He's still around. We have been discussing this in the background. We have not yet decided whether he would hand it over to me or keep it, but we will let you know as soon as the discussion settles.
So you're new, Thomas. There, if you look in our GitHub, which there's a link to later in the slides here, that you'll find a very short markdown document on responsibilities of a mentor.
Okay, thank you very much. I will look into it. Thank you.
And I'd love to encourage cross-pollination here.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, if somebody outside of ARM wants to mentor Veracruz and sort of likewise along that list, I think that's probably a better path to success.
Great. Are you volunteering for something that's not from your company?
I'm not volunteering for anything, but I would love to encourage other people to volunteer.
Gotcha. All right. So graphene is another one that is very imminent, and we don't have a name that's there. And the minutes when we actually approved it was just said that there are people that would be willing to do it, but it didn't have their names in the TAC minutes, and I didn't go back and listen to the recording. So let me re-ask the question now, because we've had a different change, because it's been 9-10 months here. Should graphene complete the process, potentially next week? Is there somebody that would be willing to step up to be a mentor from it for graphene? Actually, it might be useful if I actually brought up the, I'm just going to go to the list of mentor things. This is where it is, project mentors right here. This is under confidential meeting governance. All right, so here's the responsibilities. A system with creating a growth plan, which is required in the incubation phase. It's not required before that, but to get to incubation, you got to have one. And so there's a different page on what a growth plan is, different page in this GitHub, to help them determine what needs to be reviewed by the TAC as part of the annual review process, and proactively inform the TAC when something changes that affects the project's submission templates. So if they change a license, the security reporting process, anything else, rather than waiting for the next annual review, are there things that we should proactively? That's basically it. So it's very lightweight. You can do more interacting with the project, but as far as what's visible to the TAC, these are the three things that are sort of reporting back or being liaisons between the TAC and the project themselves. So it's actually fairly easy to do those three things. So since Mike and I have been doing it for a year, that's what we're asking, is somebody that's willing to do that style of three things. Okay. So I think graphene, I don't know how far Keystone is. I can't remember. And Aquam and Veracruz, those bottom four, are all kind of in the race for finishing the paperwork. I think Stefano, I think graphene and Veracruz, if I remember right, are basically done, right?
Correct. So Veracruz, I'm working with ARM Legal to get the document signed, but they've agreed to sign it. I just need to figure out the format, DocuSign or whatnot we're going to use. So that one I think is the closest. There's a good possibility that'll be signed by next week. Graphene is going to reach out to Chapel Hill and also Stony Brook to see if they can get an agreement on trademark there. That will likely take a little longer. Keystone, has actually gotten someone from Berkeley to agree. We just need to get that in writing. So, and luckily I know Kirsta, so I will bug Kirsta to put that in writing. So that one's also very close. That one I think we will have before graphene. And Occlum is the legal folks from the LF and from Ant Financial are working it out, and I will ping them again to let them know to inform us when things are ready.
So it sounds like the only one that might be in a board vote next week is Veracruz.
Yeah, I would say Veracruz is your best bet. Possibly Keystone if Kirsta happens to be free this Friday to chat with me.
So assuming that the vote completes successfully, that means that we will be responsible for assigning a mentor by our own charter. And so I would like to assign a mentor to Veracruz by this meeting next meeting of the TAC, which is in 2 weeks. And so if you're not volunteering now, I would ask people to do that, because otherwise we're going to have to start doing arm twisting, because we do need to assign a mentor to do, and it's really lightweight.
Dave, I can do that. I can take it.
Was that Thomas?
Yes, it was me. But if anyone else wants to, I mean,
so cross-pollination is good. It's we can also have more than one a mentor. That's fine too. In fact, our original charter that LedLF handed us said 2, and we changed to say 1 because we didn't think there was a need to do 2, but we can have 2, absolutely. We said at least 1. Okay, so let's put Thomas there for now, and if somebody else wants to also do it, that's fine, even for these other ones here, right? If somebody else wants to help mentor OE or maybe even NARCs to have another mentor, I'm sure any of these would be welcome to have multiple people, but right now I want to make sure there's at least 1, so. Thank you, Thomas. And other ones for Graphene, Keystone, Occlum, we'll still keep looking for that, but Veracruz is the most imminent one, so thank you. All right, let's go to any updates from the outreach committee. So, and I said we were going to come back and talk about that other one. So Ava, let me hand it to you for a second. You can talk about either or both of those updates from outreach yesterday, as well as the topic Mike wanted to bring up, the FOSDEM.
Ava, if you want me to do this, I actually pulled the slides up.
If you've got the slides, go for it. I
Awesome.
was not expecting to be in the spotlight. I didn't have the slides ready.
I didn't know who was ready. So, all right, go ahead, Stephen.
So the outreach committee is still working its way through a total addressable market study that
you have slides.
Sorry, no, I wasn't going to actually pull them up. I just meant I have the slides in front of me. So I was not going to slow the whole group down with the breadth of the slide deck. Where we've got to with the total addressable market study, we've determined that IDC is probably not the company to be doing this kind of research for us. And so we're taking a step back and reevaluating how we want to approach this. And there is another study we might be able to buy, but we want to make sure we understand it's cheap. It's like all of $4,500, but we want to understand what we can do with it once we've purchased it. We also, there was a discussion around setting up an event sponsorship framework for how do we think about what events we're willing to sponsor and step into. And, you know, the idea of whether or not we're simply endorsing it or whether we're actually spending money and sponsoring it and what we expect in return for that. We've got a couple of events in front of us that we're considering sponsoring right now from general members. And so we're looking at that, as well as we will add the Usenix Lisa to the queue next week. And we're using it as kind of the model from where we started of the events that we've done already. That was Lyon 18 months ago, and then the 2 virtual events that the Linux Foundation has set up. And I believe that was, there was a brief discussion of the monthly webinars and prep for graphene, and just a quick test to make sure that, you know, we had high confidence in what came out of the NARCs team because Mike has been part of this community for so long. So there wasn't a lot of oversight with that webinar. We just want to make sure we're going to have a quick review of the slides and such for the graphene project before they stand up. So we're taking that action as well. And that was the outreach meeting yesterday.
Yeah, one of the
Question?
things we've discussed in the past, and this is do not take this as any comment on the graphene one, right? Go forward with the plan that we have for graphene. But for other ones, one of the things we talked about doing is whether we want to have if it's something that the TAC has not had a presentation about recently, then having a presentation to the TAC is almost like an annual update type of thing. Could be almost a dry run for that to say, okay, well, now at least the TAC has reviewed those slides and provide any feedback as something that the TAC would potentially like to do for things about the project. So for the other ones, not so let's say, Keystone or Oclum or something. I guess Oclum is fairly recent, but if there was one that started the process close to a year ago, then we might want to have the TAC be almost a dry run or a slide review, because we do those annual project reviews for the projects anyway. So you're saying if we want additional eyeballs on slides before, then that kind of overlaps with the TAC goal. So we're happy to help.
Right. Perfect.
Okay, should we talk about FOSDEM while Mike is still here?
Mike, why don't you go first? And then
yeah, sure. So they're up to 100 people on, actually it's possibly slightly over, but at one point I counted exactly 100 people on the hardware dev room, which is the one that Enarx and a number of other folks are talking about. We had the first one of the day, so it's 10 o'clock CET. I think there's a fair number of people there as well, but the numbers just joined. There's some really interesting talks, everything from vulnerability to hardware to some interesting work on async IO that Fortanix were doing, for instance, and some really great questions, quite low-level technical questions, as you'd rather expect from FOSDEM. I thought it was really worthwhile, and I thought it was, there's some really good engagement. Ava, any further thoughts from you?
No, that's a great summary. I struggled to stay up through most of it, but compared to FOSDEMs I've been to in person, I found the overall event attendance a little lower, but the room attendance was pretty good. Like Mike said, some great questions and good conversation in the Matrix chat rooms. Yeah, that's about it. Oh, and I missed the waffles.
And beer and chocolate and
yeah, all of that. Yeah. So I did have waffles the next morning for breakfast.
Well done.
All right.
Let's remember this is the country that gave us fruit.
All right. Any other comments or questions about FOSDEM or webinars? Okay. Let's move on to the next topic. And so I'm going to bring this up. And Keith, if unless you want to share, I'm happy to just switch over and have you talk to the latest updates and things. And so.
Sure. Either way works for me. So that works.
Nope, that's the one that's before. Here we go. All right. So, yep.
Okay. And I know there's been some discussion on this before. I don't know how much of it occurred in this meeting. If I should just highlight the changes or go through the whole thing.
Since I think we have 2 or 3 new folks, I'd say spend a small amount of time with the overview and then go into the deltas. So just because there's a couple new people on the call. So.
Sure. So this is a proposal for a SIG to discuss authentication, authorization, attestation. This would focus on interoperability between different types of confidential environments, and the need for this comes from there being a number of different things emerging that are approaching this problem slightly differently, perhaps solving slightly different problems, and there is room for us to come together and create a way that makes us more interoperable between different implementations. So that's the gist of the proposal. The primary changes since the last time are related to the governance structure. So I don't know if you want to scroll down to that section. The big things were that there were references to a GitHub repo before. If you scroll down a little more, yes, right there, number 6, it's now referring to an organization instead of just a repo, with 2 separate repos mentioned, one for proposals, one for code. The Apache license is noted as a recommended license, with that being a default approved license, and but other licenses are allowed, just subject to the SIG chair's approval.
So for people that are new on this one of the discussions that we had last time had to do with the code repository. This being under the CCC would need to be an LF Projects LLC owned code repository, which just means that we need the technical charter document to be filled out. And the discussion we had was about whether that was something that would be proposed by or accepted into the process afterwards, or being baked into the charter. And I think the proposal from memory was to be baked into the charter, which is what this is saying right now. So this is consistent with that. And so that means that we would actually need to see the technical charter PDF document or Word document or whatever it is at the same time as we do the vote.
Okay,
now,
so is that an
because our alternative is to say it's not part of the vote, in which case it's not part of the charter, in which case it can just be accepted afterwards, but that wasn't the discussion before. Somebody correct me if my understanding is different, but I know Avery, you were part of that discussion last time. That's my recollection of where we ended up, is it was going to be part of the charter, which just means that we would need the technical charter.
Yeah. So as I understand it, the technical charter is necessary to establish the
repo,
the intent, the repo.
Yeah.
Sort of set the scope of it.
Yeah.
The one thing I'll point out here is the wording that's up on the screen: GitHub organization for finalized and approved proposals and code. I think that's a little bit ambiguous in terms of, like, once the GitHub organization is established as per a technical charter in the LF process, then it becomes a place for not finalized, but prototype code, new things to come experiment in. And just to be clear, that it's not a GitHub org for people or companies to place a finished project, but exactly the opposite is the intent. It's a place to start new experiments.
Yeah,
in the past, we've only had cases where we have projects that already exist that then are given to the CCC to start the process. And this was a home for things to start in the CCC rather than start elsewhere and come in later. Is that?
It could be a place where things that pre-exist, let's say hypothetically, I, as a member company, did some experimenting on GitHub, or as an individual, I could go to that SIG rather than the governing board and say, hey, I've got an experiment on this stuff. Y'all want to work with me on it, and then move it in there. Or I could go to the SIG and say, hey, I'd like to work on an experiment. Can you spin me up a quick repo to hone my code for 3 months while I work on this over the summer? That's the kind of workflow that I want to enable. In case in point, we have the GSOC, Google Summer of Code, coming up. It might be an interesting project for someone to spend a few months hacking on something as a student working with the CCC. This is the kind of organization that could home or house the code for that.
Mike, did you already drop off? Were you still on? Mike had to drop off at the top of the hour here, so.
Yeah, Mike just dropped.
Okay, gotcha. So are folks still on board with saying, yes, the charter itself includes a project, in other words, we bake it into here, which just means that when we do the vote, we also need to have at least my understanding, unless somebody has a different way of getting through the process, we need to see the technical charter proposal at the same time as we do the vote, which could be next meeting. Meaning we'd have to have it ahead of then, so we could vote on it next meeting. Unless somebody else has a different way to get through the process. That's my understanding.
Or does anybody object to including code in the charter here and want to keep it only at documentation and proposal level, but no code? That is another option.
True.
From an LF standpoint, it's very easy from an LF standpoint. I can create a GitHub repository. Legal will spin up an LLC, and we drop the charter, the technical charter, into a governance repository inside that org. And as far as the LF is concerned, that'll take all of a day.
As long as the technical charter. The technical charter could just be using the template.
Correct.
I think the question we'd ask you, Stefano, is how does the project contribution agreement work for code that doesn't exist? Meaning it's going to start in the CCC, never come from some outside person. There's no other lawyer involved. Do you still need a project contribution agreement for the LF Projects LLC to accept code?
No, the LF will spin up a LLC and just call it something like Confidential Computing Labs or whatever. And yeah, there's no agreement needed.
Okay, good. No PCA step in the process.
And exactly. I would imagine that there would need to be, say, a CLA as a standard for anyone who's contributing code to, just as they do for other things, sign a CLA for each commit. Done.
Sure. That would be up to the technical charter.
I think the default template doesn't have DCO as the
or DCO. Okay.
I think it has DCO. In other words, highlight and replace this if you have something different. But I think the default one is DCO in the document. So
default is totally fine with me. I had my bits swapped on that one.
Yeah. Okay. So I think the thing that we'll have to. I'm just listening to see if anybody else has any comments. I guess my only comment, if nobody else has one, is that we'll have to decide: do we need to assign a mentor? Or can we just say that the chairs equals the mentor? So something to think about when we have that chair discussion, which won't be this week, because I want Dimitri's opinion on that. But so I want people to comment and think about that. Do we need a mentor, or do we say the SIG chair is the mentor? And the second one is the technical charter has something in there about, needs a paragraph, if I remember right, about scope or purpose of the project or whatever. And one of the jobs of the TAC mentors is to proactively tell the TAC when something changes significantly that would affect the language in there. And so in Ava's example, it says, okay, I want to put in some code in here that for this other project or whatever. And so presumably this would be a slight widening in scope because it's a new type of thing that you're inventing. And so in this case, the mentor, maybe the SIG chairs, would just report to the TAC about, here's this other project or this other little repo that we created to do this other, lab experiment or whatever it is. And so what's the right way to phrase it in the technical charter? It seems like it's fairly easy to manage. I just wanted to bring that out as a consideration for people to think about as we're talking about how to approve this and what the process would be after that. So.
Okay, and I want to make sure I understand the action items on this. For the next meeting, there needs to be a technical charter for the organization attached to this proposal. Is that right?
Yeah. So right. So right now there is a template that for technical charters is a template in the CCC file shares, and I can send you the pointer afterwards if you have a hard time finding it.
I'll put a link in the minutes.
I know maybe Brandon can find it. And it's just a matter of taking that template and untemplatizing it. There's a couple of fill in the blanks with example answers where the examples might be fine, and unhighlighting them and so on, saying this is the technical charter and putting a name at the top of it where it says fill in the name. So it's fairly easy to do, and then it could be attached to here or just a separate document is fine. As the proposal, and then the vote would be on the collection of this document plus that one.
Great, that sounds good. And there was one other update in this document since the last time. If you scroll down to number 10, there's also an update on changing the structure, simple majority, and then approval from the TAC.
Sounds good to me.
And I think that's the bulk of the updates last time.
I think for assuming the vote completes, that this would then become, in our document repository then. I wonder if the actual names here, once we archive it, the names should probably be pulled out so that the document is, sort of
less need to be
timeless, right? Right. So you don't have to modify the document in order to, if a chair steps down and the chair gets replaced, you don't have to modify the document. It's done separately. So I think this is fine to leave it in here for the vote, but after the vote, I think the names and stuff we would drop from the approved version.
I think the actual governance document, once created, gets put in the sort of governance repo in that org. And alongside that is like, here's the election process, here are the current members, so that that file can be updated separately from the governance doc.
Right. Our mantra is, projects govern themselves. And so changes to this document after it's approved would probably require TAC at least approval, right? That's that point 10 down here, which is the 3/5 and TAC approval here. This with approval from the TAC. Whatever they do for maintainers and stuff does not require that, because if it's not in this document, it's part of the projects. The projects can govern themselves. So if you say for this repo, here's the name or the names, we don't care about that at the TAC level.
Yeah, completely agree.
Okay. Anything else you want to highlight here? I'm just going to scroll up. I see a couple of comments here. So Ned asks, does IETF TEEP have specifications that pertain to CCC endpoints? Answer, yes. So I think he's asking that because he's wondering whether the success criteria should reference TEEP in some way. So let me explain the yes, and then you guys can decide whether you think any language change is necessary. The yes came up because NARCS actually did a presentation in the TEEP working group, because what TEEP is doing would be applicable to NARCS. And it might be applicable to one or more of the other projects, but not all of them. And so let me explain here. TEEP is how do you provision code or data into a TEE that can be provisioned at runtime and that will not accept arbitrary stuff. It only accepts, signed things. And so in the TEEP applicability, things like SGX are like a normal enclave, like in the open enclave sense, are less applicable because you can just install something on the local file system and just load it, right? As long as it's signed, it will just load. As opposed to in, say, ARM trust zone, where you have this replay protected memory area that is a fixed size, just copying arbitrary stuff in there would fill up space. And so you can copy stuff onto disk, but you can't install stuff into this protected area because it's a capacity, right? And so you want to limit it to only those things that will actually fit in that space that are authorized. And so how do you get stuff in there at the protocol level when you're remote? That's kind of the problem that TEEP is trying to solve. And NARCS that applies to, because NARCS deploys workloads at runtime into a TEE, right? Those of you who saw the NARCS webinar, right, you have a keep, there's a runtime that's inside the TEE, and you can deploy workloads into there. And so they were looking at using TEEP. That was the relationship there. That might apply to other projects too, that dynamically install code into a TEE that already exists, right? And only allow authorized code into there. And so that's why the answer is potentially yes. And so if there are multiple projects, or like in the NARCS, you have the side that I'll call the orchestrator. I think Mike calls it the NARC client, as opposed to the keep. If you need interoperability between those two, then that could be a job for this as well, because that process, the TEEP process, internally, and it's part of the protocol, it uses attestation. So it references RATs for the attestation part of that protocol. And so it could become part of the same SIG. So I think that's why Ned is asking this question here. At least that's what he's making me think. So, incorporate RATs, maybe, and potentially other relevant standards, or and potentially TEEP, or leave it as is. I think of the different possibilities there. Any thoughts on what to do in the language here? Those of you who are involved in the language here, Keith or Ava or anybody else, any thoughts on how to handle Ned's comment?
No opinion on this.
No opinion?
It sounds good to me. I mean, being open about the kind of standards that we wrap into this is, I think it was your second proposal, right? Yeah. Not just being deep specific or rat specific, yeah. But
I mean, I have to admit, I'm a little bit biased here. That's why I'm asking the question here, yeah. Because I'm a co-author on the RATS architecture document and on the TEEP protocol. So.
Yeah, I mean, you can just generalize it to be relevant standards. If you wanted to, you could say such as RATS, TEEP.
Okay.
Yep.
I personally like that wording. So that was relevant standards such as. So I'm going to do a proposal in here just to capture just what you said, unless you type it first. So am I in editing mode or am I in suggestion mode? I want to make sure I'm in suggestion mode.
You're in edit mode. The little pencil in the upper right.
Yeah. Thank you. Yep. Ah, somebody else beat me to it. Anonymous Cheetah, you win.
I like that change. I think it's good. As we all know from XKCD, there are always multiple standards. I don't think the purpose of this charter is to pick the specific standard we want to build to, but to say that we want to build two standards and build consensus and abstraction layers for that. So I think this is great.
Yep. Okay. All right, Dan is Anonymous Cheetah. You're no longer anonymous, Dan.
No, man, I've been outed here.
Okay, so I think that's good to address Ned's comment here. I'm going to scroll up looking. I think there was one more.
Shouldn't it say ideally before would? So a successful proposal would, sorry, after, ideally, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I agree with that.
All right, Simon, thank you. All right. Anyone else on that part? Okay. Ned comments and Dimitri responds. I take Dimitri's answer here as being that Dimitri does not believe any changes in the text is needed. Keith, do you have anything to say about this one?
Yeah, I think this was just to make sure this wasn't constraining the problem more than it needed to be, that TPMs could have a role to play here.
So I'm just thinking about Dan's text below. Should this say such as TPMs or including TPMs?
Making it a more optional language rather than instructive. That sounds good to me.
And I might add the word hardware against a hardware trust anchor. Ooh. Is that a good clarification?
In the definition of confidential computing, yes.
Great. And just for point of reference, there are other open source projects out there trying to do the same thing, such as Keyline, in a different foundation entirely. They're focused on TPMs as a hardware anchor, a hardware trust anchor for VMs and clouds. So
yes, well, this one is specific to TEEs, and I don't know, is that one independent of whether the thing talking to the TPM or using the TPM as a TEE or not?
This is interesting, and I'm not sure how to read the sentence when it says such as TPMs to be compatible with TEE vendors. Those two phrases don't.
I think I understand the intent. I don't know if Keith, you want to say anything about that? Otherwise, I can guess.
No, I think it's so that the various authorities, regardless of which TEE vendor provides them, that we abstract it and make it common or make it compatible.
Is the statement here to make an abstraction that covers both TPMs and TEEs? Is it an either or both?
That's a good question. I think that a result could actually entail either one of those options.
So here's how I understand the intent, right? The problem is, how do you verify or attest to a TEE or workload in a TEE, depending on how you want to think about it, in a way that's compatible with multiple TEE vendors, okay? Now, how do you verify that's running a TEE, right? You're going to do verification by a verifier that's going to do some checking of evidence, if we use the RATS terminology. And so that evidence chains up to some trust anchor authority, which might be a TPM, might be something else. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to verify the TEE, right? How
verifying
you do
the
it
TEE
involves
integrity using a hardware trust anchor that is external to the TEE. Gotcha.
Whether it is whether it is external to depends on that's the such as.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I think the wording isn't as illustrative as it could be, but I understand the complexity of that.
And so when I say it may or may not be external to, if you take if the TE is, say, a secure element, like a global platform compliant secure element, they would argue that the equivalent to the TPM is inside that TE. It's part of that same security chip. It's all one chip, right? It's not two different chips, right? And so that's why I say
I'm with you now.
Yeah. So if there's any way to change the wording to be better, I inserted the word TE as my suggestion here because that's how I read it.
Yeah, I wonder if we just actually want to cut the TPM thing out. Because if you look at Key Lime, it's trying to verify a different environment than a TEE. It's treating the platform as like, did that platform boot with integrity? And now I can trust the platform, and that does feel out of scope from how we've defined things.
So Dan, why don't you put in a suggestion that, since you have Anonymous Cheetah, your pal, propose a deletion there. And then Keith, if you can just fill in Dimitri on this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll let you do that, Dan. Okay. Anyone else have comments on that phrase? Okay. I'm happy to come back there if you want. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going up looking for another one here. Let's see. So there was a suggestion last time to add something in here about Mike's original suggestion, and I suggested actual wording here, but I didn't put it in as a suggestion in here yet. Unsolved problems academia can help with. So something like that. I mean, this is not a deliverable, it's a topic that's in scope for discussion.
So is the intent here for the A3 to kind of create a list of like a call for action of things that they would like to worked on in academia? Is that what the intent is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there's various academia that's actually involved in CCC projects. A number of the projects that came in, which was I forget whether it's Graphene or Keystone or what, actually came from academia. And so if they have questions, it says, what is something we can help with? This would be a good place to keep track of those that might come up in other discussions. Say, oh, well, this one is too hard for us. We're going to kind of punt that, but we can add it to that list that academia people can look at. I mean, there may be people that would be participating in A3 that would be from academia. So,
yeah,
I would phrase this as unsolved problems that require further research.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be academia that actually does the research.
That's true. Okay. Okay.
Can I suggest another topic?
Yep. Actually, do you want to edit it in here, Jethro, or do you want me to just do it when you're talking?
If you can just add it in, and I don't need to find the Google Doc, sorry.
Yep.
So the topic would be, well, I mean, maybe it might be subtopic of two, but a way to link different types of attestation claims for the same platform.
What do you mean by that? I'm just going to type in what you said, but
yeah, allow me to elaborate a bit on that, right? A lot of people, when you say this remote attestation, right, they're immediately thinking about remote attestation of the CPU, right? But these systems are generally like a larger system, right? It's not just the CPU that needs to be secure, right? So you might want additional attestations on like other hardware that exists in the same machine, or some claim about the physical environment that the machine is operating in, right? And you would want all of those claims for one platform to be somehow connected.
If I understand what you're getting at, and I can't say for sure that I do, but I think that this is the type of thing that the RATS working group has been discussing. Thomas, you've been in that too. And so for one definition of link, I know that the EAT specification talks about things like that. And I imagine that some of the documents in other groups like TCG or Global Platform are addressing similar problems. So that's why I think it may actually be underneath either 0.1 or 0.2, which was your question.
Right. So just Jithro, just to understand your point, and could you take a look at deliverables 0.2? Because maybe linking is what we call binding there.
I'm just going to move this one to a comment. I just want to capture. Okay, there we go. All
right. I don't know what proof of possession means here specifically. Is this about like physical possession?
No. I think physical possession and provenance. Yeah.
Okay. Looking at the abstract is a definition of proof of possession. Proof possession of a key.
Right. Not. Yeah. So I don't know who wrote this. Like, is it meant to be used for physical possession or?
I suspect not.
Yeah. I missed.
Yeah. So examples of things.
Yeah. So certainly, some of what I just said falls under this right binding of the different layers. But some of what I said doesn't. Specifically what I was mentioning with regards to like physical security claims.
Mm-hmm. So the difference, so the split between deliverables and topics was my original suggestion. Deliverables are things that are core within the charter of the CCC, and topics are generally things that are done by other organizations that the CCC either has requirements for that other organization or reviews other organization stuff. And so that's why, if it's a IETF thing, then reviewing the IETF stuff is not really a deliverable, but it's a topic, right? As a deliverable is things like, code and things that we actually produce, reports or whatever, where topics are like interactions with other bodies, such as research organizations, whether they're in academia or industry, to Simon's point, or whether there's feeding requirements to other organizations, or reviewing things or whatever. So that's why, things that are in topics for discussion, but aren't necessarily going to be a publication from the CCC per se, as opposed to the code for things which are in the deliverables. So, which is 0.4, right, which is the implementations of standards and things.
Right. So, I mean, then I guess the way I phrased it just now, it's already covered, but I would like to make sure that things like being able to describe like the supply chain of a whole platform, or being able to describe like the operation of the operational environment of a platform is considered in scope here.
Yep. Well, my opinion from what I'm reading would be yes. Anyone else?
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like in practice, if somebody shows up to this SIG and there's room in the agenda for a topic that's attestation related, it's probably going to work. We need to get exhaustive on the list.
I think that was okay.
Before you scroll away too far, I don't think you actually hit the comment. Okay.
I didn't hit which
on
one?
Jethro's comment on
there. Yeah, thank you. I just want to capture that. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, and I think there was only one other comment, which was Thomas, and so why don't you speak up yourself?
What was that? Okay, so multiple frameworks and project presented in the. So yes, this was mostly for my own edification. This is mentioned multiple frameworks and project presented in CCC that should offer a way to mutually authenticate an authorized application. So I just wanted to say to list at least, you know, be more specific. Yeah, here.
So I know Open Enclave SDK is one of them.
They're listed above.
Oh, you're right. Well,
but this is in addition, right? So that was
this
what confused me a bit.
This is presented. So this is presented in the CCC. So not all of these are in the CCC. So for example, this one is not in the CCC. This one is not in the CCC, even though it's from a CCC member. And so this is presented in the CCC, so it's going to be that subset. And then which ones actually authenticate and authorize applications running within confidential computing environments. So I think we only have to give an example or two. So let's just say those two, I think it's certainly true for that meets both of those.
Fantastic, thank you.
Just out of curiosity, does EDP facilitate that?
Jethro?
Is EDP what?
Does EDP have, what's it called? Offer a way to mutually authenticate and authorize applications running within confidential computing environments?
Yes, I mean, I don't know. I don't really see that as a function of EDP, right? That's really more a function of SGX or whatever platform your EDP is running on, right? And if the platform
is a different layer,
right, then it's exposed. So
yeah. Sounds like it's a different layer than the focus of this, but okay.
Google Oslo would fall into this category. But.
Okay, so I'm going to mark this as resolved, Thomas, since you said okay.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, well, it's not accepted yet, so technically it's up to when, unless Dimitri objects. So Mike had commented before he dropped at the beginning of the call. For those of you here who were here like 2 minutes early, Mike was saying he didn't have any other comments on this document, and so. All right, is there anything else that people want to discuss in here that we would need to spend time on during the call, or does everybody think that if the changes we've put up here as suggestions, if those all get accepted, would everybody be ready to vote on it? Anything else we need to discuss before beginning a vote? Because I think we got a couple members that aren't here, and so the next steps, Keith, would be to take the pointer, send it to the TAC list, and say, this can be done, I'd say the next step, let me just back up. Do that technical charter step, which should be real easy. Just create the document or whatever. And if you send it to me or Stefano, we will copy that up into the file share. Then we can send out email announcing that it's ready for review. And I guess the last question that I would ask is, can we just do the vote in next meeting? Or is there any reason that we would want to do the vote over email?
Well, like that sounds good, and I'd propose, doing the vote in the next meeting.
That would be my default answer, unless there's okay. So let's do that then. All right. So then, Keith, since Dimitri is here, you have the action item of making sure the technical charter document gets created. If you send that to me and Stefano, we'll copy that up onto the share. And then we can put on the agenda next time and link to both this and the other one and say, please be ready to vote in the next meeting.
Perfect. Sounds great.
All right. All right. Anyone else on this one? Great. Thanks, Keith, for driving this. All right. That was our main topic for today. So let's see. The next one has been deferred to next meeting at Dimitri's request. And I didn't see any other GitHub pull requests or issues that need to be discussed in a meeting. So this is our usual link here where the TAC label on it means it's for the TAC, and the only one that's really new and interesting is the one that we just deferred till next meeting. There's a separate one that is the one that Stefano uses to track changes to the website and things. And so that discussion of webinar FAQ and webinar questions and updates in the FAQ, you'll see a bunch of issues there. Anything else you want to say about that, Stefano?
Nope, I think that's fine. That covers it.
Yeah. So let's see, November webinar questions is there, and a bunch of other things that affect the website. And is the, where do I find, oh, you said the Google Doc was in the minutes, right? Which was that one. No, that just points to the issue. Where do I find the Google Doc on the webinar questions?
Oh, I sent that to the list, but it's also in the chat. Let me see.
Yeah, can you share your screen and just bring it up so you can show people what it looks like? And
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
We had it up on the screen last time, but this is where we want to point people to start doing the pass. So
sure. Okay. Hopefully you can see that.
Yep. All right. So I see you can see Mike's comments now. Okay. So some of these we were discussed in the meeting last time, but we need to start doing any edits here and decide, because the real question to decide in the discussion here, I'm just kind of repeating what we talked about last time, is which ones of these are ones that we actually would want to add into a FAQ or do something else with. So the intent is not that this whole list goes someplace, right? This is a question. Each one of these has a separate question, right? Which is this a FAQ type of question or what? And so this is just where we have the discussion in here, right? So I don't know if there's anything we actually need to discuss today, but this is what I want to call people's attention to start having the discussion in this document here as to which things we might put as a frequently asked question or which things we might do something else with. So,
and I'll be sure that this gets in the minutes as well, so that this link is available.
Sounds good. All right. Anybody have something that they specifically want to talk about on this one? Otherwise, I'm happy to just let this one be done offline as people go through it. So. Okay. If there's nothing else, any other business is our last slides. This is the last item on the agenda here. So anything else that people want to bring up? If not,
we had chats systems on the agenda for a while, and I think the last update from Stefano was that the LF was going to make something generally available to LF projects.
Indeed. Yes, there's a that's in process, and I'll report back as soon as the LF has completed its integration.
Okay. Stefano, can you add that to the list of action items then?
Sure. Yeah, we'll do.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. Any other business? Okay. Hearing silence, let's go ahead and close the call. Everybody have a happy Chinese New Year.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks all.